because we have more than enough boards, and we have a lot of people. We're only missing 3 people. 2 people. 2. So thank you, everybody. We're here to board retreat and executive committee, not really. We're here for, sorry about that, folks. We're here to discuss budget, so call me in order. Review and revise agendas may be advisable. Is everybody good with? Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know how many people are in the room with you. It might be nice for all of us up here to know.
Oh, so anyways, I'm sorry. Thank you, Emily. Besides the people in TV land, we have our vice chair, Al Clausen, down at the other end. Clerk, I'm sorry. You're the vice chairman, Emily, in case you didn't know. Sorry about that. And we have,
Sorry, Emily.
Selena.
Go ahead, Lori, you introduce it. We have Selena from Marlboro here, otherwise known as Rosie. We have this guy here, and we have me. We got Ken, not Ken.
Joe.
Joe Winrich. Jeez. Well, you guys got me all flustered now. You got me off my game. That's it. I'm all done. I'm leaving now. Emily, you run it. Okay.
I haven't either.
So we have 4 people here, plus we have Lori and we have Bill. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so thank you. Thank you, Emily. That was a good call. So are there any revisions or changes to the agenda? Anybody? Okay, if not, moving right along, minutes of the October 26, 2022 meeting. So that was the retreat over, and that's why it says retreat up top, because Bill wanted to remember what was that, those minutes were from. So can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, I'm gonna give TV Land Ken the motion, I'm gonna give Al the second. Are you good with that, Peter? Okay, if there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 It appears to be a unanimous decision. It is unanimous. Thank you. We're going to move on to new business. Our first item under new business is budget first draft review and possible action for approval. So I want to just, before we start this, a few years ago, right after Bill took over, what we've been doing for budget for WCSU is Lori and Bill and the cabinet work with the administrators in all the buildings to come up with an educationally sound, student-centered budget for central office to present to us. And then we've been meeting with Lori and the superintendent. This year we got to meet with superintendent-elect, or I'm not sure what they call him. Bob was at the meeting also, and usually the officers will meet with Lori and we go through everything. Sometimes we'll pick up some minor mistakes, not very often with Lori. And we kind of put together, look at the budget to make sure that we all understand it so we can help you all to understand it. And I just want to say, I want to just take a minute and I want to really thank Lori because Lori busts her backside on this. And it's a lot of work when you look at this budget. And it's a pretty, she lays everything out on the line. I know in the past people have always been concerned about the superintendent's budget and the budgets that come out of their office because there was not a lot of backup, and sometimes we would ask questions and we weren't always sure of the answers. And I just want to thank Lori and Bill and Bob and their team for putting together a really good budget, one that's easily understood. And Lori, it's nice how you get everything out there for us, and we really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lori. So she can kind of review it. So those of you in TV land, I guess you got Bill emailed stuff out earlier today. So I'm going to ask Lori just do a quick overview, and then once we're done, Lori's done with her overview, we'll see if there's any questions, okay?
Rich, I think for those of us in TV land, the budget came from Lori.
Oh, came from Lori?
The email from Lori.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Bill's email.
Bill did send some other backup material, but the budget's, thank you.
Okay.
You want me to?
I just figured I don't mind being on the screen so they can see me and I can see them.
That's way more exciting. Than
Well,
what
it's
I was
just
doing.
nice to have the interaction.
Okay.
The
You ready?
facial, the cringe or the,
Are you gonna be cringing?
I don't think anybody's gonna be cringing. I hope you all had time to just take a glance at it. You were able to get it a couple of days ahead of time so that we can just work through this, but feel free to stop me at any point and ask any questions that you might have. So, starting out, there's a table of contents here. You can follow along with that. The second page, number 2, is our organizational chart. The only real difference to the organizational chart is we did take off the 21C director position off the top line because we do not have that grant and we're not assured of that grant for next year at this point. However, the after-school coordinators and program leaders were moved under the instructional leaders position there. So that was the only change. And then a position which we'll talk about later under the business office was added. Full budget narrative. I hope you had time to read this, so I'll just go through this. Overall, the superintendent's expenses were up 17.53%, yes, above COLA. But fortunately, we have additional revenues because of the federal indirect, which is a federally approved rate that can be applied to all federal grants that Wyndham Central receives. And it's for exactly this, of operational costs that can't be devoted to a specific project. So that's supporting AP and payroll and bank reconciliations and things like that, that all increase with additional funds, grant funds. So by applying those additional funds because of additional federal grants that we've received, we're able to bring down the assessment for the superintendent's budget to 2.55%, so well below COLA. That's consistent if you look on the chart on page 4 with the last 7 years. We've been able to keep your assessments going out to the schools for these indirect operational costs, really low over the last 7 years. Any questions about that? All right, hearing none. Technology was moved into the superintendent's budget. It's a base operational cost. That budget is up 21% with an increase in staff and also software and hardware due to inflationary factors. The assessment for technology, however, it stayed the same, and it's based on FTEs, so it's prorated by FTE, and then the rest of the costs, which are shared, software, hardware, all of those costs, are split up by ADM. Any other questions? Before we move on to the MTSS budget, let's just take a look down at the staffing FTE changes. So those are all the changes that were made, and that's throughout all of the budgets. And I just wanted to note that the salary increases, certified staff was 2 years of negotiated increases, so the salaries are bumped up more than a typical year because we're making up for what wasn't in the budget last year and what they negotiated. Handbook employees, there was an overall pool of 5%. Healthcare is estimated, it's a little over 12%. I'm comfortable with the 12%, but that's what we're hearing out there in the field right now. And then there were some other adjustments you'll see to the budgets, and of course I pointed out the $120,000 of indirect funds that are going to offset indirect revenue that is going to offset some expenses. All right, so moving along, when we get to the MTSS, I'll talk more about that.
We're gonna stick with just the super's budget.
For right now, yep. So we have the superintendent's, we have the 7-year, that was on page 4. Was there any questions on that page at all? Just over, the last 7 years? Yes, Mark, I think, yeah, I have to go back and forth with my glasses.
Thanks, Lori. So I've got a kind of an overall question on ADM. Looking over all these different budgets, ADM seems to be having a bout of schizophrenia. They seem to be different numbers to the different budgets. I'm hoping you can explain that.
Sure, yes. So the superintendent's budget is based on ADM from an elementary view because of the people in the buildings, right? We're supporting the staff and that, but the MTSS ADM is all of our students because special ed we're supporting our secondary students through special ed in that way. So that's the difference there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. So then on page 5 and 6, you have the detail of the superintendent's budget. And you can see in the revenues, the $120,000 increase in revenues.
Line 44200.
Which is line 44200. Does anybody have any questions on the detail budget?
Rich said something about so.
Hey, Lori,
Russ?
I have a question. When I'm looking back at page 4,
Okay,
and I'm looking at the average daily membership back in 2018 of 885. And I'm looking at the average daily membership estimated for 2024's year at 766, I guess it is. That's a 13.4% decrease in students. But I keep seeing it go up and up and up. And it seems like we're getting to a point where it's going to be unsustainable, that the cost to educate is going to exceed what people are willing to pay for stuff. And it seems to be a long-term trend. It's not just from 2018 until now, it's over the last 20 years. And I think we need to address that long-term issue about decreasing enrollment and increasing budgets.
yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It was a decrease of 119 students over that 7 years, so that's quite significant. I will say as far as this page 4 is just looking at the superintendent's office budget. And the decrease in students doesn't have an impact on this budget. There's still the same amount of payroll, it's more staff is the staffing and that type of thing is really what plays into at least the business office piece of things. We have the same amount of AP and the same amount of payroll with 885 students as we do with 766 students. But I agree with you that we do need to address that.
Thank you.
Your FTEs compared to is only up a little over one person too, and all the additional requirements that have been put on the office from 2018.
Right.
It's pretty amazing we've only gone up 1 point. You've gone up,
Right.
yeah, 1.05, right? Yeah. So Russ, if you look at the FTEs, the bottom line, central office since 2018's gone up 1.05 FTEs, just a little bit over a full-time person, but there's a lot more paperwork involved. There's a lot more stuff going on that they're responsible for. They had to bring in a whole new program for the accounting. I think they've done really, really good keeping it as low as they have. I mean, other districts have had a loss of students, but they've, increased their staff quite immensely.
I agree. I think that it's, the central office has done a fantastic job, but it's an overall trend that's continuing throughout Vermont.
Yes.
And if we keep cutting programs and benefits for the students, The only way to meet the budgetary limitations is to, cut programs and staffing and stuff, and then the tax rate goes up for the, for the percent taxpayers. It's a brutal cycle.
Is. Good point. All right, so if there's no questions on the superintendent's budget, we can stop there. If you'd like, Rich, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So overall, they're asking for, give me that one number.
Hold on, I'm gonna get to the bottom page
Page
here.
6.
Yeah. 1,816,141.
1,000,000, I'm sorry, okay, thank you. $1,816,141 for the superintendent's budget. We should do the ADM now too while we're discussing it.
Oh, we can?
So, one of the things that, as when we met with Lori as the officers, and Mark, you brought this up, and it's, I wish it had been just a couple minutes later, because it would be a really good lead-in. So, several years ago, Marlboro, probably back in 2018, right? Marlboro made a request to the WCSU that we do the special ed budget, or the MTSS budget now that we call it, not based on the actual usage by the individual schools, but we do a more broad approach, and we do it based on the entire SU. And we had several really good meetings. I know, Dan, you were there. I think Selena was there. There was a parent from, you were there, Joe. I was there. Lori, I think, and there was also a parent from Marlboro.
Jude, who was a former board member.
Former board member. But anyways, so we had a lot of discussions, and we went to more of a model that was kind of sort of like with our capital budgeting, where it kind of levels out the playing field. So maybe one year you spent a lot in special ed and your budget took a hit, and as Russ said, then you're trying to figure out how to not make too big an increase, not having to reduce programs. And then the following year, maybe the people moved in and out of town, so you had a big drop, and then the following year you have a big increase again. So one of the things is, as Mark noted, there's a whole bunch of different numbers we use. We base the budget in the 4 budgets. You remember the superintendent's office has the superintendent's budget, which is the operational. They have the MTSS budget. They have the user for fee budget, where we combine, and several of us will combine with the school. And they also have a essential early ed budget, or the early education budget. And most of them are all based on the, we've been using the weighted average daily membership, which takes the last couple years and weights the students. The only budget we still use, the actual student count, is the superintendent's budget, correct?
No, the other ones are also just a 1-year look instead of a
Okay.
rolling, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So what we thought, if the board wanted to consider, and it's not part of your budget vote, but it's something that we can talk about if you wanted to do it, was to use the weighted average daily membership number, which is a 2-year look. So again, Russ made a good point where he showed, in FY18 there was 885 students, and then went to 845. It jumped up. It's going down, and I know a lot of schools have had that too. A couple families move into town, your population jumps 4, 5, or 6 students. 3 families move out of town the following year, or a business closes, or something happens, and you lose maybe 4 or 5 families. And it's great for that first year because you've got the count from before, but eventually you have to pay the piper. And the other thing is, all our money that we get from the state, the basic grant money that we get from the state, is based on that weighted average daily membership, not on your actual membership for that year. So we were going to ask if people would consider or think it may be a good idea to look at using the weighted average daily membership versus the actual projected student count. So we want to throw that out there and see what people thought of that. The officers, when we met with Lori and we had that discussion, thought it'd be a really good idea, and that we would bring it to the board. And if we vote to do that, or we could vote to do that, it would be a separate vote from approving the budget. And remember, we vote to approve a budget that we feel is educationally sound and will support our students. The way we decide how it gets allocated between the boards is something else we can vote on as a separate motion. But I thought it would be a good time to think maybe about that before we moved on to the other budgets, because we could apply that pretty much across the board.
I think it's a great idea.
So-
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think COVID has really nailed that one on the head, right? Like, all of our communities have had a huge increase and then decrease of folks coming to live in their second homes during the pandemic and then leave again, or buy property or real estate in the area and then leave. And, you know, we might have been really excited about the potential of what we thought was a spike in, yay, people are moving to Vermont, but they're actually not.
They left.
They left. You know, and we're already doing it with a special education budget, so I think it's more,
Uniform.
it's more uniform, exactly, and, you know, we already do a lot together, and it makes more sense for us all to be in this together, I think.
And it kind of goes to Mark's point too, where he's like wondering why we have all these different numbers, so that we would be able to, we have one number, set of numbers to look at, instead of having to remember which budget. Are there any other comments, any other thoughts? Go ahead, Russ.
You're muted, Russ.
Unmute yourself, Russ.
The
Whatever you-
CLA is averaged over a period of 3 years, which makes the peaks and valleys less dramatic. And I think that the longer period of time you average the average daily membership between schools over a period of time will make the tax rates change less dramatically within each individual town. I think it's a matter of understanding the math of averaging numbers that can make it more palatable maybe to the taxpayers within each town. I don't think doing it just 1 year at a time and the actual average daily membership would make spikes in the tax rate somewhat untenable for some communities. Thank you.
I think though, so Russ, that's what your tax rate's based on anyways. Each town's tax rate is not based on the superintendent's budget, it's based on your budget at your town by the weighted average daily membership. So what we would be doing is, we would be using the same number your tax rate is based on for the budget items through the superintendent's office. That's why we thought it made more sense. So you only have to explain one number to your voters, because they may say, well, how come under the superintendent's budget we only have 100 students, but under the state we have 110? That makes no sense to us.
All right, I misunderstood the intent of the point of changing it.
It's not equalized pupils though. It's not equalized pupils though. So do you want me to explain the mechanics of it a little bit?
Well, I think that gets confusing.
I
So
think it
what,
would be helpful, actually.
well, hang on a
I'm
second.
sorry, Rich, can I chime in here real quick?
Hey, Beth, hang on one second.
Okay.
What, I guess we can go off into, the average daily membership, the long-term, all the different ways that the state comes up with numbers. What I was looking for was that whatever number the state generates for each district to base on your tax rate, that would be the number we're using or not? I thought that's what we discussed.
Yeah, so the census is sent up to the state, right, and that's where the 2-year rolling average starts, and that's the long-term membership, what you're talking about. Exactly, that's where it starts, and then it's weighted into an equalized pupil. We're talking about before it's weighted.
Before the weighted.
Yes, correct.
So, okay, so that was my mistake, and I get a little confused because I'm getting really old. But, so it would be the same number we'd be using across the board. So and again, we throw out a whole bunch of different numbers because the state creates numbers, we use numbers from what we see. So I guess there's two things we need to accomplish. One is we need to, if we want to, is to approve the superintendent's budget. And we also need to decide how we're gonna how we're going to, how we're gonna pay for it, which would be, which numbers do we use to divide it so we know what everybody's cost is. So can I just go
Should we
back?
make a motion and then go for discussion?
Well, yes, but I think we need to separate the two out, so let's stick with the budget for a minute, okay? So is there any more questions on Lori's budget, or the budget that Lori presented on behalf of Bill and Bob and the supervisory union?
Rich, you have Beth who wanted to say something.
Yep. Beth, is it on the budget?
No, it's just about where we all stand as a community. I'm not quite sure where we are in Wyndham on our CLA, so I just would like to hear more what Lori has to say as far as more moving forward, and I agree with Celine that, we're all in this together, so, and we all need to do our part, so obviously each town has to do their job, and I'm just hoping we can do that moving forward, so, yeah, I'd really like to hear Lori speak, because I think she's in the know.
Okay, so the CLA is different than the students, though. So do you want to talk about CLA or students?
I absolutely want to talk about students, because I think the CLA's job is that's separate, that's something for the town, and that's something we all as a town need to be proactive with. But I think our focus as a school board is the students, 100%.
Okay, you want to go through how we get the students?
Sure. So basically the mechanics of what I'm talking about is the census that is taken right now and sent to the state. That is averaged with last year's. These are the counts, the students in the chairs, the tuition students. And so that number is where your equalized pupil comes from. And that's the number we're talking about tying to. It's what it will do is smooth year to year your assessments so that you're not Wyndham, who gained 5 or 6 students this year, and Marlboro lost some students this year, but yet it'll average those 2 years so that it just smooths the assessment over time. It's just a mechanism to do that.
Lori, can I just ask, this is based on the count we take in October?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that was, it's averaging 2 years of the count.
Correct.
Celine, did you have anything else? And then I'll go to Dan, because I cut you off.
It's okay.
I'm
It's
sorry.
okay.
Dan, go ahead.
You're muted, Dan.
Everybody's having trouble in meeting tonight.
So, I'd like to make a motion about the budget itself. We can get back to I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget as presented, $1,816,141.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Dan and a second by Al. Peter, did you get that?
Got it.
Thank you. So is there any discussion? Dan, you make the motion, you get first dibs at it.
Rich, I think we've had a good discussion. I don't hear a lot of controversy about this, so that's all I got to say.
Al, you all set?
Yeah, no, very fiscally prudent, as always, done the most with the least. So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any discussion? Ken, go ahead, Ken, I'm sorry, I don't see you.
Yeah, Lori, what was that percentage up again?
For the assessment that will hit your budgets, 2.55.
2.55.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Ken, are you all set? Okay, go ahead, Allison.
We're voting on the budget that Lori had presented, not on the ADM versus the weights, right?
Correct, we have to split that, so we're gonna start with just the budget.
Oh, I have one more question. The
Okay.
grant that we got to the 120, whatever it was, is that a,
Indirect.
Yeah, it's based on grants, but it's an indirect rate. It's not a grant itself.
okay, is that renewable?
So, that's a great question.
Every federal grant.
Okay.
Right, so that number, because we had the increase in federal funds from all the ESSERs, that number is increased this year.
I see.
It'll come down as ESSERs go
Go
away.
away.
However, we also will receive other federal grants that will provide
I see.
some of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Seeing none, are you all ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving the superintendent's budget of $1,816,141, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
It appears to be a unanimous vote. It is unanimous, so congratulations, Bill and Lori, you got one budget done. Do you folks want to go on to the next budget, or do you want to discuss the way we charge the budget we just approved out to the, and all the other budgets, how we approve them out to the individual districts?
I think we can do that because we already do it with the next budget, with Stephanie's budget. We already share it. We are already doing it, so we might as well stick with that before we go into Stephanie, if that's okay with folks.
We're sharing it, but this is, it would just change those ADM numbers to
Right,
be
right.
a 2-year average.
Is there any way that stays on, or you have to?
Got a motion sensor.
It's
We
energy
move it.
efficient.
Al has to dance every 10 minutes.
Okay, so, hey folks, just so you know, the lights go out not because of anything weird happening here, it's all automatic. It saves energy, and then Al dances. So,
So can I make a motion
Go ahead.
to, I don't know if I'm gonna get the language right, Laura, if you could help me. Make a motion to, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
Make the budget assessments.
Make
based
the
on
budget
rolling
assessments.
two-year ADM.
Yeah, maybe Joe should make.
No, no.
To change the
To change the
methodology.
methodology of assessing our budgets to the ADM model over a 2-year period.
Correct.
I'll second that
That
motion.
was excellent.
okay, so we have a motion by Celine and a second by
Joe.
Joe. Don't interrupt me.
Whoever that guy is.
The guy next to me that you can't see. So Peter, the motion was to change the methodology for the budget assessment to a 2-year average.
Oh, she said ADM model, is that what that means?
Yes.
Yes,
I will put that in parentheses, 2-year average.
thank you.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Joe, you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion. We have a second. Celine, you get to speak first because you made the motion.
Oh, I mean, I already said it. I think that we're already doing it, and it makes sense for us to continue to do it and spread it out throughout the other budgets that we already have. I mean, we have been progressively moving towards a more unified supervisory union as a whole anyway, because it supports all of our tiny schools better. I mean, none of us have like large ATMs anyway, so it helps us all in the long run.
Pretty well said, thank you. Joe, you all set?
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Mark, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, we were talking about going to a 2-year rolling average for all the budgets or just the superintendent's budget?
Just the budgets that come out of the superintendent's office.
Oh, yes.
So all the budgets that we're talking about, the MTSS,
ECSA,
all the, okay.
fee for service.
Right. Well, the fee-for-service is
No,
not the
that's-
fee-for-service, Marcus. Fee-for-service is specific to what you choose. So the boards control that individually. So it's the other 3 budgets.
And the superintendents would still be just based on the elementary students,
Yes.
not the high school students. So we're still gonna have 2 separate ADM numbers.
That's correct. I think that makes the most sense. I haven't done the modeling to see what it would do to use the same, pre-K through 12 numbers for the superintendents, because there are sending towns that, I would want to do the modeling for that, but I think it makes sense to stay with the elementary numbers in the superintendent's budget. but make them a 2-year rolling average, which then ties to it ties to what the state uses.
Do we know how this is gonna change the percentages that were shown in the budget that we were presented? Do you have any idea?
No, because we just talked about this.
So, Mark, one of the other things, we did bounce this around a little bit when we were first talking about it. And the important thing is what we usually do is we usually vote on a budget before we know what the implementation, what it's gonna do to budgets and how much it's gonna cost us specifically. We do that at the school level too. We don't, when we first start discussing the budget, we don't consider the expenses, we consider the expenses, but not like what the tax rate's gonna be based if we vote this budget, and we usually come up with an educationally sound, taxpayer-friendly budget the best we can, and then we have to figure out if it's something we can afford or how we can make it affordable or sellable to the masses. So we didn't have her do a bunch of, we thought it made sense because we were doing it with other things. It's gonna change it a little bit, but I don't know how much, and I'm sure we can have that back when we go back to our individual boards and she presents the budgets to us. The numbers will be there. There are going to be some winners and there are going to be some losers, like there is in everything. Some people are going to pay a little more this year than they would have, and some people pay less. But what we're trying to do is average it out over, a longer term.
Well, I'd be a lot more comfortable if we were implementing this for next year and not this current budget year. I'd rather see the numbers ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there any other questions or comments?
Can I?
Oh, go ahead.
You can't see me.
Oh,
It's
I
also
can. I see
tying.
you up there.
You can? Oh, hi. Yeah. It's also tying it to the state numbers. So we don't have those state numbers yet. That's the other piece of this, is it's, making it uniform with what is reported on the state level.
And they come out the middle of December.
Right, December 15th.
So we wouldn't have them before we did the budget anyways.
No.
Okay. But Lori can get us close.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. Yeah, they're not gonna be that far off from what we're
Looking at.
but
Al, do you have a comment?
No, I just thought that was a great point, that they're not out yet anyway, so, yeah, no, I'm ready to vote.
Are there any other questions, comments? If not, if you're all ready to vote, all those that want to change the methodology for the budget assessment to a 2-year ADM, 2-year rolling average, please signify so by saying aye.
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 Okay, it doesn't.
Yeah, you have to go individually.
Yeah. All those opposed, please say nay. Are there any opposed?
Ken, I think he was. Ask Ken.
Okay, you're opposed,
Nay.
Ken? Okay, so because does not appear to be a unanimous vote, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Peter, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dan MacArthur, how to vote you?
Aye.
Okay, hang on one second, guys. Okay, Mark, you're next on my list.
Nay.
Allison, you're next.
Aye.
Dwight.
Aye.
And Ken McFadden.
Nay.
Emily.
Aye.
Russ.
Aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
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 So I count 9 votes to 2 votes. It appears as though the motion passes.
Sorry, I could not hear the last two after Clausen.
The last 2 were ayes. It was 9 to 2. We have 2 nays.
So after Al Clausen, who voted?
Selena, Joe, and that was it.
Just
And they were both aye.
Huh? Selena, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And you know what? It's in my head, so it's gonna be worse, just like
You become
now,
French.
she's in my head.
Yes, I'm very funny.
Okay, so it's 9-2, the motion carries.
Dan McCarthy.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I have a clerical correction that I'd like to make after this is done. So go ahead with your vote, Rich, and then come back to me if you would.
Okay, I believe we're all set. I think the motion's passed.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Dan.
So on page 2, the board of directors or Marlboro members I should be removed from that, and Selena Romo as the vice chair and as the designated voter should be on the second member of the Marlboro contingent.
Got it. So he was standing in for Doug.
So, Dan is standing in for Doug.
Sorry.
That's
My
okay.
mistake.
No, it's not Lori's mistake. I gave Lori that info. That is Bill's mistake.
Peter, yeah, Dan's not the representative from Marlboro to the WCSU board. It's Doug and Selena.
Yeah.
If I got that right.
Yes, that is correct.
I like Rosie, it's easier for me to remember.
Page 2 of the budget package.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so if we're all good, I'm ready, and we're ready to move on. Our next budget is the MTSS budget. And Lori, you gonna start that, and then Stephanie can speak a little bit?
Yes, I have some other charts and things. Do you want me to go through those first or jump right into the MTS?
Well, this will be affected by what we just voted on.
It will. It could come at the end of the packet though.
And this matches what you put in the
Okay, I'll go
narrative.
through this first then. So page 7 is the summary assessment table. So this is where all of the assessments from all of the budgets will be loaded in here, and so these reflect what's in this budget here. So these will change, but these are what is going to come over to your district's budget. So it's just an easy way to look at this and then look at your own budget. Mark, did you have a question on this sheet?
Yeah, can you just define resident students?
Define.
Second.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Transportation to resident students. Got cut off in my column.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next page on page 8 is something I introduced last year. And I think it's just helpful to see, these are the major places that people are paid from, and the FTEs that are involved in each grant. And so the first column is general fund, and then the MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support budget, the fee-for-service budget, the CFP/SWP, which is the consolidated federal program, which is your title funds, which feed into our school-wide plans. The IDEA-B, which is the special ed grant, Medicaid grant, and then the child nutrition program on the end. So I think it's interesting, and I also think that it's just to be really transparent where everybody is paid from. Page 9 is, and we're going to refer back to page 9, so I want you to pay attention to it. For a second here, we'll come back to it. What I really want you to pay attention as we go into talking about the MTSS budget is the 2022 ending fund balance for the MTSS is just, it's over $1 million, so almost $1.1 million. So I want you to keep that in mind as we roll right into the MTSS. So I'm always really excited. I know budgets don't seem exciting to everybody, but I'm really excited to share this budget. I was excited to build it last year for the first time, and I'm excited to share it with you again this year.
We're grateful that you are excited by budgets.
It really aligns the work that all of you started back in 2018. So in 2018 is when Act 173 was voted on, and you all formed the special ed subcommittee, as we talked about before, and we got to a point of sharing all of the special education costs. And ultimately, you decided to share all of the costs for MTSS. So I hope that you have time. I know it's a lot of words and, but just really, when you have time, read through pages 10 and 11. Jen and Stephanie, they've really laid out what MTSS means for our students, and this budget that we're about to talk about supports all of this. So that's why it's exciting, because it's tying it all together. All right, so I'm on page 13, and we're gonna just talk through the,
Can I just say something quick?
sure.
Sorry, I have my hand up, I'm sure it wasn't seen. I just wanted to sort of reiterate what you were saying, because this was a big challenge for every school district across the state of Vermont. And I just wanted to acknowledge that Wyndham Central took this and applied our skill and knowledge to make sure our students' needs were being met through engaging with district management group and making sure that we had the students first. We put the students first, and I just don't, Lori, I appreciate what you just said, but I think it doesn't quite get to the core of the success in Wyndham Central of this. I just want to applaud the work that all of our staff have done in the SU and in the special ed department, and acknowledge that, because it's pretty significant. And thank you. I just wanted to say that.
Here, here. Thank you, Emily. All right, so the summary page, I'm gonna go through this fairly slowly because I really want you to understand where all the funding sources are coming from and how it's all bringing everything together. So if you look at the first grid at the top, you'll see fiscal year 24 budget in bold. So the first column is the MTSS gross expenses, both from local and from grants. So it's basically $7 million. This is up 7.79%. Again, a lot of that's in the salary and benefits, which we'll see in the chart next.
Which was a 7% increase.
Yeah.
So it would make sense.
Yeah, right. And then there's a little bar above the next grouping, which is the revenue. So how do we pay for the $7.6 million, right? So the first column is the census block grant, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So this is the grant where the state writes us a check, right? They write us a check for, in this case, $2.6 million. And then they say, you come up with the rest to fund your initiatives. And this is actually, it looks like, when you compare it to 23, it actually looks like an increase, but we know that this is actually going to be a decrease over several years, I think till 2025. Our actual 23 census grant was 2.7, so it is a decrease from actual. It looks like an increase here, but make no mistake, this number is going to go down year after year. Then we have the CFP grant. So we talked about that. That's our titles, right? So which then are applied to all of our school-wide plans. So we're using $582,000 of the consolidated federal grant to help fund this. The IDEAB grant, which is stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Act, this is dedicated to specifically to special ed students. So this is part of this whole funding, but it really has to be specific. We had some money this year through ARP IDEAB. That goes away next year. So that's a loss of revenue. And then we have the ARP ESSER. And ARP is the American Rescue Plan. And ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Funds. So this was the $2 million that Wyndham Central received. And part of it went out to the individual districts, and then part of it was earmarked for this program. And then we have some extraordinary costs revenue, which is down, which also means that expenses in that area are down as well. Because we still do get some extraordinary costs for students, special ed students that are over 63,000, or is it 60? I can't remember now.
60,000.
I think it changed, but yeah. Okay. We get 95% back over 60,000. And then I'm recommending that we apply $400,000 of fund balance, which we just talked about, the $1.1 million in fund balance. But first I want to show you how we're not going to fall off the ARP cliff. So, this is where it gets exciting, you guys. All right.
This is exciting.
So, in your supplemental packet, which is a very detailed, it's really the raw. It's the raw data, which I don't usually give you, but I really wanted you to see this and understand how we're not going to fall off this cliff when ARP runs out. So if you look at page 2, is everybody there with me? You guys, you're still with me? Okay, I see thumbs up.
Page 2, you said?
Yeah, page 2. We're going to look at lines 61 through 70, and you're going to look at column G, which is fiscal year 23 year-to-date actual. What do you see?
Nothing.
60 what?
61 to...
61 through 70
Use your
lines.
ruler. Joe.
Use your rulers if you need
It's also
to.
highlighted.
Yeah.
Now that I just realized that.
No entry.
Nothing.
There's nothing there, right? So
What did you do?
what we're doing is we're supplanting, which is allowable with ESSER funds. No other federal grants, but ESSER funds, we were allowed to do this. So we're budgeting for this money, but we're charging it over to ESSER. So we're creating that fund balance, an automatic fund balance by doing this. So that just gives the runway for this program to, run further. And it secures this ESSER money that goes away in September 2024. So that's where we're not falling off the cliff. So when I say that we can use 400,000 of fund balance to bring down the assessments out to the districts, we're going to replace that at the end of this year. So does everybody see that? How that works? Isn't that fun?
Brilliant.
I got to tell you, I love it. It's financial planning, long term, right
Well,
there.
you've been doing that all along, haven't you? That was why we created the fund when 173 was enacted, was so that way, because you already projected that
We were
7
gonna
years
lose
ago, that
money,
you're
so-
like, wait a minute, we're gonna come off this cliff, so we need to start.
Yes,
I
right.
thought it was last year we voted to put the money.
Because we have only in this grant are we allowed to supplant.
Right.
Right.
And so Lori diagnosed that since that option was available, and we know the grant is gonna be reduced every year, what is the best fiscal strategy for not falling off the cliff?
So we're using those ARP funds, this one-time, I hate to say free money because it's definitely not free, but we're using this one-time money to really invest in exactly what Emily was talking about, right? I mean, and so that's what the exciting part is for me. So that makes your assessment 2.91%. So the year-over-year variance, which is what we split up by ADM and add it to the previous year, is 83,564. The budget you would be approving is the expense budget, though. That is the
7667969.
you got it, Rich. Yep.
So what you'd want to do is if you agree with what Lori's gone through, somebody would make a motion to approve the MTSS budget at $7,667,969. And then I guess we need a second motion to use the fund balance because that's,
Yeah.
Because we're voting the number, but that does, and then we would vote to use 400,000 in fund balance.
Yes, that makes
And do
perfect
you want to
sense.
say, how, should we explain where that, well,
It comes from the MTSS budget fund balance.
okay, so that would be a second motion, if somebody would like to make that, or are there any questions about the financial voodoo that Lori's doing? Go ahead, Mark. Did Chardonnay have a question, Mark, or did you?
You mean Cabernet?
Cabernet, I'm sorry, I knew it was a wine.
At least you got the breed, well, yeah, the type of, anyway.
Wrong color of wine, right?
Was it? I don't know.
It's the wrong, yeah, sorry, I'm not doing well. Back to your, the, page, no, page 11. I just wanted to clarify the fifth bullet down. The assistant director is replacing, the assistant director position is replacing coach position. Am I reading that correctly?
You're on bullet 5, Mark?
What was that?
Bullet 5?
Bullet 5, yeah, the fifth bullet down.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and one other thing, we're not expanding the grades of our schools, right?
We are not expanding the grades of our schools.
Okay, so on page 10, I'm assuming that's supposed to be K through 12, not K through 22.
No, it's actually,
Age 22.
age 22. I should put the word age there because special education goes through age 22.
Okay, thank you.
It can go through the age of 22.
Yeah.
It's needed to.
Stephanie might want a chance to talk about it. Sorry.
Is there any other questions? Hearing none, would anybody like to make a motion?
What's the number again?
7 million, right here,
Oh.
I moved it.
I'll make a motion to approve the MTSS budget as drafted for the amount of $7,667,000 and 969.
7. Peter, do you have that number?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion, do I have a second from anybody?
Second.
I'll second.
I'll give it to Beth. Yeah.
Why, who else was up?
Pardon?
Why, who else was up?
You
Oh.
are, Beth.
You were, it was yours.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to approve the MTSS FY24 budget at $7,667,969. Selena, you made the motion, you got any other comments?
Nope, thank you, Stephanie and Lori.
Beth, are you all set?
Yes, I agree with Selena, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, I did have one other question. On the chart, on page 12, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 from the left, the outside tuition and excess cost. Is that all private school or kind of what makes that up?
Which,
The outside
Outside
tuition,
tuition,
excess cost.
The outside tuition and excess cost column.
yeah, it's actually down. I think, Stephanie could speak to that.
Yeah, those are out-of-district placements, and due to a lot of the work that we've done in, with MTSS budgeting and strategies and support, we have been able to keep more students in our in-district and more in our schools. So that number has gone down, and we hope to keep it that way right now. Knock on wood, we have 0 students in elementary in out-of-district placements for the first time in, I don't know if it's ever, it's been decades at least. So I'm very excited about that. So that is what that number is.
To become a victim of your own success.
And that was one of our goals.
So that's wonderful. I wanted to make sure that we weren't spending $1.5 million out of district by choice.
Right, yeah, it's definitely never by choice. It's always by, definite need. And I will say, over the years, because we've worked so hard to create school-wide systems and support, I think it's much harder to, like, the only kids going out are kids with really severe challenges, and we're working to try to, find ways to get them to be able to come back. But sometimes their, nature of things or the ability to, I don't know, create like small programming, very responsive therapeutic supports is like, something we can't really copy yet because of our size. That's the other reason why I am on the Vermont Learning Collaborative Board, to try to work regionally to see what else we could do to reduce costs over time. So does that help answer that part?
Yeah, that does. I've got a follow-up to that, if that's okay, Rich.
Yo, go ahead, Mr. Mark.
So when we have secondary students that are in, I'll just say private schools, we're covering their special ed costs. Are those services being provided by Wyndham Central, or are we paying for outside services to provide those?
So it depends. So if they're school choice students who say from like a choice town and they're going to one of the choice schools that they have, if they're on IEPs and that school is approved for special education, then we would pay the cost of the special education portion. We case manage the students, so one of our case managers is the local education agency rep at all the meetings, and we make sure that we're keeping in line with how we treat students here too in district. So there are costs that we pay that way, and then there are some like UHS and schools like that say it's, they'll take the cost of special education and divide it by the number of students, and then however many students we are sending down there with IEPs, that's the cost. So whether a student has a spare educator or not, it's all kind of factored in the same way that we share special ed costs here. So we do have costs for like excess costs in that case. So that's one side of it, and then the other is when we place a student out of district, there oftentimes the cost is so high that it ends up being that extraordinary cost level. So anything over 60,000, that's where we are receiving the 95% back in revenue for that. So did that answer that question?
It did. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
You're welcome. No problem.
So, and it used to be, Mark, that we would get invoice, like if a student with an IEP went to a public high school also, we would get billed. And at one time, Brattleboro started it several years ago, where they were charging us a pretty large case management fee, which almost doubled the tuition cost. And so I think a lot of that's been changed too, which has helped a lot. Emily, you had a question
I did, well, it's not.
or a comment?
I'm gonna say it again because I'm not gonna apologize for cheering on what we're doing, because I do believe we are a model. What you just heard from Stephanie, and I wanna say, Stephanie, thank you for the work you do. I know it goes across the district to all your staff, and I know you support all of them too, but this is a model for what we had planned on doing under 173, which is not being duplicated every district the way we are doing it here. I would really strongly say the state of Vermont needs to take a look at Wyndham Central and see what we have achieved because of our investment and because of our commitment to students' needs. That we are, Stephanie, I just want you to say it again. We have no outside placements
For
that is
yeah.
unheard of. And feeding the needs of our students in the district, which is the goal, has been the goal all along. So sorry for, beating on this one, but it's super important. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Emily, I've been saying for years that Wyndham Central should lead the way and the rest of the state should follow our lead, but nobody listens to me.
I've listened.
I know you have. Is there any other questions or comments?
Yeah,
Ken,
Rich, you have to run for Senate.
no. Ken, you dropped off for a little bit. Are you all set? I'm not sure if you missed anything, or we made a motion and we're discussing the MTSS budget. Yes, he's okay. If there's no more questions or comments, are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, Beth, if you're all ready to vote, all those in favor of an MTSS FY24 budget in the amount of $7,667,969, please signify so by saying aye.
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 That could have been unanimous.
It appears to be a unanimous decision in the affirmative. It is a unanimous decision. Stephanie, thank you very much, I think. Are you gonna stick around for the next one?
Am I needed for it? Or?
No,
She's looking for
Oh,
ECS.
ECSE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's discuss I'm sorry, go ahead, Al.
Are we taking up the fund balance?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
sorry.
So the next topic is, we need to make a motion if you wanna take 400,000 of fund balance to buy down what we have to pay as individual districts. This has been recommended by our Chief Financial Officer Extraordinaire, Lori, and approved by the superintendent. And we should just make a motion so that we remember we're doing it and if nobody can question it. So could I get a motion to move for the 400,000 from the MTSS fund balance, to offset? Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Who seconded?
I did.
Selena seconded it. Is there any more discussion? Mark, you get first dibs if you have anything since you made the motion.
Let's do it.
Okay. Very good, Selena.
Yay, Mark.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of moving the 400,000 from fund balance, please signify so by saying aye.
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 It appears to be a unanimous decision. It is a unanimous decision, so Lori will move the 400.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so next is the early childhood special education. Mark, this is only from 3 years to 5 years, 11 months, not to 22. Much shorter time frame.
All right, so this is our little special ed. This is not part of the MTSS budget. It was not taken up by Act 173. And it is down significantly this year because of not, at this point in time, I have to qualify this by saying, at this point in time during service plan, there were no one-to-one paraeducators needed for any of our ECSE students. That doesn't mean that a student won't move in and we will need one, but at this point, there is not a need for that. So the budget is down 177,000, 34%, so that will show in your assessments as well.
What's the number, Lori, please?
Well, the budget itself is, hold on, I get to the last page.
354.8. I'm sorry.
Yes. No, the total expense budget is what I need. Here we go. For fiscal year '24, we are asking for $330,658.
Okay.
Oh, 330,650.
Yeah, it's on page 16.
We also use grant funds to offset some of these as well. So some of the charges for our ECSE, especially in the related service, are charged to our IDEA grant.
But you're not using any fund balance.
No.
Okay, so it would just be, all we're gonna need, go ahead, Dan, give me 1 second. All we're gonna need is the motion for the expenditure. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's my motion, $330,658 for
Correct.
ECSU.
Do I have a second to that
Second.
motion?
Second,
Beth?
give it to somebody else. I already had one for somebody else.
No, you need to be in there. So it's Dan and Beth. Dan, you get first shot at it if you have any comments, questions.
I like what Mark said, let's do it.
Beth, you all set?
I'm in total agreement, and thank you, Lori, so much.
So I will then, are you all ready to vote? Any other comments, questions?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor of spending $330,658 for FY '24 early ed, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
It appears to be a unanimous decision in the affirmative. It is unanimous. Congratulations on those three budgets. We're gonna take a few minutes and Lori's just gonna go over the fee-for-service budget. So many years ago, we stopped voting on this until after our budgets are approved locally. So in case something happened with our budget, it was something that we could use to adjust local spending. So and usually Lori builds this plan with the administrators in each building and for each district to come up with what they feel is needed. So go ahead.
Okay, so this,
Stephanie can go, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Stephanie, you can leave. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you
Thanks,
guys very
Stephanie.
much for the
Thank
support.
you.
The only quick thing I just wanted to ask is around the policies, number 6 on the agenda. Do you guys need me for any part of that, or are you guys good with that? You guys, okay?
We're all good.
Text
And
me if
you'll-
you need
you'll-
me to join that down.
You'll have
Thank you,
the
Stephanie.
signed one.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, so this is, it's actually a shrinking budget, and as the districts, merge together, there was less of a need to share resources because we just budgeted right into the individual districts. There are some things that are still hanging out there, though, so we'll just quickly go through those. So ELL teacher, I'm just leaving that open at this point because right now West River's the only district with English language learners as their second language. No, how do you say that?
English language learners.
English language learners, right. So they're the only ones right now. River Valleys has had some in the past, so that might change, which is why it's still there and not in West River's budget. PE is shared by 3 different districts still, so, it lends itself in this budget. Guidance, again, this is a little different situation here is that there's a half-time special ed guidance person who is also shared with West River. So this seems to be the place to put the other half that we need to. So the one half is in the MTSS budget, this is the other half. The instructional staff training, this is all to do with the West River and Wyndham Central Master Agreement and the pool of PD funds. And then we moved technology, other support services. This is a shared cost for all of you use minute takers. If not Peter, then somebody else. So that's that. The resident students, again, is the transportation. This is our contract with West River Transportation. River Valleys has a little bit of this for Wardsboro, not for Dover. Dover has their own buses. And West River Education District, this is their primary mode of getting students to school. And then the last one is the food service operation. And I did put an ADM for comparison down there because all of the districts do use this resource. This resource has to do with the child nutrition program in all of your schools, now Wyndham as well. And it's a 1.60. This is where we did have an increase we added a person here to deal with a lot of the day-to-day paperwork, because we found hiring chefs that they love to cook, but they don't really love to do paperwork, and it's very hard to find that skill set together. The other 0.6 is someone in my office who does all the compliance, which is on a daily basis. They are working with the compliance. In fact, we just got another request for a monitoring, which is normal. We get several monitoring visits a year on the child nutrition program. So that's the fee-for-service budget.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so I believe that based on the vote that we just took, that the distribution will be based on your ADM comparison rather than the numbers above that. Is that correct? Is that where we stand now?
No.
No, so the fee for service is either by, I'm purchasing 2 days a week of PE. So it's really done, it's, based on time. I put the ADM for comparison for the food because that could be done that way. And just as a comparison to see how, right now, it's based on revenues. So, and I think last year we talked about this too, right? Our revenues for child nutrition program have been really skewed for the past 3 years. So these are actually three-year-old numbers I'm using because we just haven't had revenue numbers that were consistent, right? We had the federal government was paying for all meals at one time. Currently, the state of Vermont is paying for universal meals. So, it's just another way to.
But Dan, we don't vote this budget until the spring. So we can bring this up in the spring and then Lori would be able to give us a better picture of, if that one section should be taken out, because that's something we all have. But it wouldn't make sense to do it for like the gym teacher or for the other services.
Correct.
So that's definitely something, but again, we're not gonna vote on that till later in, in the spring.
After our local budget.
Right,
Yeah.
that's my question is how, if we don't use ADM, do the various school administrators ask for services which creates the spreadsheet above the ADM comparison one? How are those figures generated?
Those are generated right now by the revenue that we receive from the child nutrition program. So it's based on Marlboro's revenue from 3 years ago, what they received from the government. So that's the proration is really the revenues.
Got it, okay. Yeah. Doesn't look very scientific, actually. So.
No, and we really couldn't have even looked at ADM for the food program before, but Wyndham is now, has a food program, right? So Wyndham wasn't even participating. They didn't really get any revenue. Well, they got $250 for milk, I think, per year. So.
Hey, and I just want everybody to notice, Beth and Wyndham, you have an increase like I have never seen before, 16,510.33% increase in one of your line items. If people don't pick up on that at your town meeting, Russ and Beth, I don't know what's up.
So that is for the food service.
Oh, that's what I said, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
just
did?
for the
Okay.
food service.
I didn't-
Because when we first started reviewing this, I looked at that and said, oh my gosh, how did somebody go up 16? I've never seen an increase like that in my life.
I didn't get back to check my formula, but I
I
should
think
be
it's
right. Yeah, should be right.
So again, we don't vote on this now, but if there's any questions or anything you come up with, and Dan, we'll be able to look at this again come March or April, which I'm sure you're gonna be back for. Is there any other thoughts or comments? Okay, if not, we're being asked to sign a lease or food van lease.
Okay,
You'll like it.
you're right. This is another fun one. Okay.
Is it a
So,
Subaru?
no, it's a 2018 Ram ProMaster City Cargo Van. So back when West River started the food program, it was the year they merged. They did an in-house food program versus getting a contracted service. And in that, they also were providing meals to Wardsboro. And there was a need for a vehicle to get the meals to Wardsboro. However, when I went to get the lease, West River was a newly formed entity and had no credit score. So Wyndham Central had to lease the van on behalf of West River. And now we bill West River for that on a monthly basis or whatever. We bill them for that van. So Wyndham Central's whole with that. It's up for, well, in the next 6 months, it will be up for, the lease term is up. We have an potential early buyout for the lease. So what we're asking is for Wyndham Central to buy out the lease, which is around $11,000. I can't get an exact figure because it depends on the day you do it. And then to sell the van to the rightful owner, West River, for the same amount that they get the lease for. And then I'm gonna come to West River's board meeting and I'm going to ask West River to trade that cargo van in for potentially a pickup truck for the grounds, the building and grounds, with probably making around an $8,000 profit because the trade-in value is worth a lot more. So it's, so
We'll say yes to that.
Yeah, Greg Frost and I are working on this. We don't use the van very often. We actually sometimes tell people, goes back to your question you had the other night, we actually tell people sometimes if they have to go somewhere to use that van to save paying mileage. But it really sits more than it is used. And it really can't be used to run meals up to Wyndham, which is also what West River is doing right now, because it's not a four-wheel drive, it's a two-wheel drive, so it's really half the time is not going to be useful in that. So,
Yeah, that absolutely would not work.
yeah. So
the
my
motion-
request.
So the motion would be, to make it right for you, is that for Wyndham Central to pay off the lease on the food van and then allow the SU to sell it to West River for whatever that amount is.
Correct.
And what if West River says, no, Wyndham Central already paid it off and
Then we will sell it
for a profit?
for a profit.
Okay. So are there any questions about that? Could somebody make me a motion?
I'll make it.
Go ahead.
So moved.
You gotta be fast with this, Kurt.
Was that Mark?
Yes.
Okay, so Peter, the motion is for Wyndham Central to pay off the balance of the lease of the food van for West River and then to sell it for West River for whatever that lease payment that we make pay off is. And if West River doesn't want to pay it off, then Lori's going to sell it at a huge profit and buy us all dinner. You can drop the last part of it.
Thank you.
Are you all set, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have a second? Second. If not.
Okay, Mark made the motion. Celine seconded it. Is there any discussion, questions, comments? Are we ready to vote? Oh, go ahead.
I'm gonna get you a beret.
I did.
I'm gonna get you a beret.
Who's I?
A beret,
Selena.
why?
Cause Celine is French,
Celine is French. Selena is what?
not French.
Oh.
Not French.
Selena said that she made the second.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
It occurs to me that the supervisory union is actually selling it for under its fair market value. I just want to point that out because it appears that it would be more valuable if sold on the open market. I'm not opposed to that, I just want to point that out.
And I think
All right.
the reason was, though, is West River would have bought it, but they didn't have the credit score. So again, working to help out. And West River's covered all the expenses and taken care of it, and it's been strictly for them.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, if everybody's good, all those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
It appears to be a unanimous decision in the affirmative.
Thank you.
It is.
Well.
Okay, so, the last thing before we move into equity, no, I'm gonna say one more thing. If anybody on your board that isn't here tonight, if any of your public, if anybody has questions about the budget is something that's open, it's public knowledge, we can hand it out. Please let Lori and Bill know. You can send them an email, ask your question. Please include your board chair, just so your board chair knows, kind of is still in the loop. But there's nothing that we've done that's secret or we try to hide anything. And again, Lori, you've done an excellent job, you and your staff, and Bill, you've done an excellent job getting us a business manager, chief financial officer that is on the ball. And then, it's one of your better things, best things you do is you find quality staff for us and then let them do their job and support them how they need it. So again, I can't say enough thank you. You've done a great job.
Appreciate that, Rich.
So.
Could I add one quick thing? As an evolving practice that you guys have all seen throughout the years under the guidance of our Director of Finance, Lori is adding this year, when she comes to present your draft budgets, she will also give a preview of what you guys just did, so that everybody is completely transparent and all the boards are transparent, and it'll be recorded 5 times. This is the WCSU budget. This is what it looks like. This is what we went through. So that everybody is fully aware. We operate in a transparent manner. You guys have always given us that direction. We've always operated that way, and we want to continue on that path. And so Lori had the idea, we should just do that when we go to the budget. So just be prepared for that when you come to see us, when we go see Marlboro on Thursday, when we go see December 14th for West River, when we're December 5th for River Valleys, we will open with a little review of the WCSU budget.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bill, we have under old business, equity coordinator for FY24 budget. West River Education District request, and this is also, the Jedi was one of their goals last year, wasn't it, in the Jedi group?
Yeah, it's one of the end of the year recommendations from the Jedi group.
So Bill met with your administrative team.
Yeah.
And you have some suggestions.
Yeah, so we met with the administrative team on November 3rd. You all met on the 26th. You received a request from the West River Board to consider this investment. The direction from the WCSU Board is to go and talk with the leadership team, which is all the principals and the directors at central office. We did that a couple times. We did it virtually on the 3rd. We had a couple live Google Docs in between so that all voices could be heard. Then we met in person for our leadership team meeting on November 9th. And we had a really honest and thoughtful conversation. And really the 4 bullet points are the consensus of our group. That we want to continue the momentum of the equity work that we've been doing. We are now going into year 4, which is really exciting. We want to continue our collaboration with the Collaborative for Educational Services out of Massachusetts, specifically for consultant services and facilitation. We support, and this was the longer term discussion, is we have always prided ourselves in not making knee-jerk reactions. I think the Act 173 process is a good example of that, where we understood that the law was changing, we created a subcommittee, we had multiple meetings over a 13-month period with multiple stakeholders, reporting back to the boards, reporting back to the districts, to make thoughtful decisions about how we are going to operate in that new environment. So we want to be honest that we have a great belief in this, but we also don't want to shortchange what we have done really well at the WCSU, which is be very thoughtful about decisions. So that's that 3rd bullet point. That was really important for us as a leadership team, that even if we are excited about it and even if we support it, we still want to go through the process of being very thoughtful and collaborative about getting to an endpoint. But we also understand that this is budget time. And so those 2 things are a little bit in counteraction. And so what we are asking is, would the WCSU board consider making some sort of investment placeholder to allow a process that would, essentially, if you guys approve this, I would go and meet with Bob. Bob and I would then consult with the 2 administrators on the Jedi team, Wayne Kermensky and Scott Tabachnik. and come up with a process where we would have a small committee that would think through what could this position do, what are other SUs doing, what have they found that has worked and not worked, how can we learn from groups that have been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and then come back to this group with a formal recommendation sometime in the spring so that a person could be prepared for next year. But we would need to either set aside some money from either fund balance and MTSS or some other mechanism that the board gets advice for from the director of finance, but then not make a decision until it has been fully fleshed out and a full recommendation can come from this subcommittee that would include a small group of interested parties. So that's kind of it.
Could that not be part of the agency for fee for service?
So-
And we could do it at the same time, have that discussion, and then you could present to us options?
We could. My fear about it, my recommendation is not to put it in the fee-for-service budget because I believe it is absolutely part of MTSS and it will affect so many different things. And I also think it affects the entire SU. And so I wouldn't want it to be a piecemeal position. I would want it to be, this is for everybody, we're all in it, it's gonna benefit everybody. It could happen at the same time, but I wouldn't want, my recommendation is I would like it to be clear that it wouldn't be a part of the pick and choose fee-for-service bucket.
So your recommendation would be that we commit 100,000 of fund balance from the MTSS budget towards this?
My recommendation would be to commit $125,000 of the MTSS fund balance in a nice little lockbox, so that in the spring, after town meetings, so it'd probably be the April meeting, that a formal recommendation could come to the board of how to use that investment after it was fully thought through.
So the board will still, the WCSU board will still get to decide.
Absolutely.
So even though we're gonna put this money aside.
You're not
if-
committing the money, you're
Right.
putting the money aside.
If we decide that we want a little more or a little less, or we want to, or there's a recommendation not to do anything, we're not held.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does everybody understand what Bill's asking for? Does anybody not understand it? Maybe. If everybody understands it, are there any comments, any questions? Would anybody like to make a motion? Go ahead,
Can
Sam.
I just clarify, like, so you want to add, if after you guys go through this will be added to the MTSS budget, which will therefore then be charged.
So we
to-
already voted on the MTSS budget.
Right.
So this would be, for next year,
Right.
it would be using fund balance, but
Yeah,
then
yeah, but
at
at
this
the
meeting
future.
next year,
Yeah, in the
it
future.
would then be a
That's
part
what
of the MTSS.
Sorry, that was my, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of waiting a year, this is a mechanism to make it happen.
And
Okay,
we
I just
have
wanted to
a
clarify.
history of, in all the different budgets, and like we brought the building person, yeah,
Director of
Director of
Operations.
thank you. You know, we brought him in the fall.
Right.
And so it's not unusual for us to do this
It
kind
isn't.
of.
The work sometimes doesn't match up with 9 months in advance.
Right.
And the leadership team felt very strongly that we don't want to rush into that, even though we believe in it. But we know we need to be
Flesh it
upfront
out.
and transparent about committing the money, but we need to flesh out exactly what it looks like.
And I'd also like you to correct something too, because you have 4 members of your administrative team that are on the Jedi team, because you have the 2, Scott and Wayne. You also have yourself, and Bob this year is
Yeah.
on it also. So, I mean, it's pretty well represented by a majority of your
Oh, yeah.
administrative staff.
Absolutely.
And Jen was on it last year.
Yep.
So, I mean, you've had good representation there, and so,
What's work we believe in, you know? And it's evolving work, and it's changing work, and it's challenging work. But we just really wanted to have 2 things. One, we believe in the work, and we would like the investment. But 2, we don't want to shortchange the process of being really thoughtful.
or just go into it half-cocked.
Exactly.
So,
We don't do that, and we don't want to change
okay.
that.
So are there any, go ahead, Mark, I'm sorry.
Because I think many of you know that I sort of live and breathe the word equity, and I think it's really important. What I'd like to ask is that in your job description, or maybe just in your research of how this has worked in other SUs, you have an understanding of how one person can be able to support 5 potentially very different districts with very different equity needs.
Yep. No, it's an excellent point. That's part of the reason we want time.
Appreciate that.
You all set, Mark? Any other comments? Anybody else?
Yeah, Rich, I think this is a proactive move from somebody that we've trusted, who's been a leader, and I've just been incredibly impressed tonight, so I'm all in.
Would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, sure, yeah, why not?
Okay, so Beth moves to commit $125,000 to a lockbox for a recommendation from the administration in the spring for a equity coordinator to come out of the MTSS fund balance. You have that, Peter?
For an equity coordinator, what's the?
Are you gonna second it?
I would, but I just want to make sure we have it right. It's not just the equity coordinator, it's also,
Equity coordinator and the facilitation and consultation services. Thank you. Great
Okay.
point.
Beth, are you okay with that motion? We added facilitation and consultation.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I'm confused about the language here.
All right, Peter, here you go. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So the motion that Beth made, okay, is to set aside $125,000 from the MTSS fund balance for the purposes of facilitation and consultation services and an equity coordinator position to be presented to the WCSU board in the spring of 2023
for the FY24 budget.
for the FY24 school year.
School year.
FY 24.
Yes,
All right, forgive me. For the purposes of facilitation and consultation services,
And equity coordinator position
coordinator position.
to be presented
Uh-huh.
to the WCSU board in the spring of 2023 to service the 23-24 school year.
The 23-24 school year.
so,
For a recommendation from the administration in spring for equity coordinator. Wait a minute.
Why don't you read it back to us, buddy?
Okay. Move to set aside $125,000. The services and equity coordinator position to be presented to the WCSU board in the spring of 2023 to service the 23-24 school year.
Okay, one more time. We lost you a little bit there. I think I got a little correction.
To set aside $125,000 from the MTSS fund balance for the purposes of facilitation and consultation services and equity coordinator position to be presented to the WCSU board for the spring, in the spring of 2023 to service the 23-24 school year.
Okay, can you just add the word consideration, because it's not a done deal, right? The only done deal is the $125,000 is going to be put there for that decision. So if you can add the word for the WCSU board's consideration. And if you have any questions, you can always just email me what you typed, and I can make those corrections, because the board will approve the minutes at their next meeting.
To be presented to the WCSU board for their consideration in the spring of 2023.
You got it. Thank you, Peter.
Got it.
okay, Beth, are you good with that motion?
Yes, I am, and thank you, Peter, so much. I know that was a lot to get. I was there with you.
You did a great motion, Beth. Thank you very much.
Who seconded?
We haven't had that yet, so can I get a second to that motion? Go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
Second before.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're still trying to straighten out the motion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Beth or Mark, you have any comments or want to speak to it?
No, thank you, Rich.
All set, Mark?
Let's do it.
Okay, then let's have a vote. All those in favor signify so by saying aye.
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 It appears to be a unanimous decision. It is a unanimous decision, so congratulations. Bill, you can let the Jedi and your admin team know that we're moving down the road. Our next item is a policy discussion, and it's the policy D as in David 7, WCSU Special Education Policy Adopt in Action. So has this not been posted, right? So this is,
No, this is the second time.
This is the
Second
we
time.
warned it before.
Yeah.
okay. So we did approve this at the,
We warned it,
warned it at what meeting?
26th.
Okay, so it was warned on the 26th, so it's had 10 days. Would somebody like to make a motion for us to adopt policy D7,
So
special
moved.
education? Thank you, Celine. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mark.
And, Celine, would you mind a friendly amendment, not just to approve it, but to have Rich sign it?
Sure, let's do it. Rich, sign it, please.
The board chair to sign it. Okay, so Peter, we're moving to adopt policy D7 and to have the board chair sign it. All set? Okay. So, motion's been made second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 It appears to be a unanimous decision. It is a unanimous decision, so I will date it and sign it. I think that brings us to the saddest motion we make at all our meetings.
Yeah, Rich, you don't have to date it, it's already dated.
Oh. Okay, I'll fix it.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. Before you do that, November 30th, we don't need a budget meeting, do we?
Not.
So there's
Cross
no,
off the 30th and the 7th.
cross off the
Sixth.
30th and the 6th. We don't need, we're not gonna meet then. Any of you that wanna meet, we'll go to Dan's house and he can play music for us and sign album covers. Okay, there he goes, see? So serenade us off the meeting. So we have a motion to adjourn by Joe, and all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, folks. Really good meeting. We got a lot accomplished. Thank you for all your hard work, and we'll everybody have a great Turkey Day.
All right.